friends, and welcome to our Facebook Live Thursday. And today we are going to be talking about how to set boundaries if you're an empath. This is something that comes up often with my clients and in my coaching groups and in my membership. And so I thought I would bring this topic in to you today. So if you are new to me, my name is Nancy Levin. I am a master coach, best-selling author, and I help overachieving people pleasers make themselves a priority and set boundaries that stick. So if you identify as an empath, and I'll go into some specifics around that, but if you identify as an empath, you're in the right place. So let's first explore some ways of defining empath. And I will let you know up front that I am pulling from the work of my dear friend and colleague, Dr. Christiane Northrup. She wrote the foreword to my brand new book, Setting Boundaries Will Set You Free, that is available for pre-order right now. And in fact, I'll drop the link right here in the comments. The book is available for pre-order. It's coming out on January 7th, and you can get it in hardcover, ebook, or audiobook. So again, I want to first look at some defining characteristics of empath, because it's a word we hear and we may not exactly know what it means. So all empaths are highly sensitive and intuitive beings. But not all empaths are alike. So there are some different kinds of empaths. There are emotional empaths, and emotional empaths can actually feel the emotional state of others. So it's when we're actually tuning in to the emotional state of others, and we are not clear fully about what's ours and what's theirs. Similarly, a physical empath is able to pick up on the physical ailments of others. And this is another instance where we're not quite sure where we end and someone else begins. So we're picking up on someone else's physical ailment, and we're mapping it onto ourselves as well. And while most empaths are either physical or emotional, there are a few other kinds as well. There are empaths who feel the emotions of animals. There are global empaths who are picking up the emotions of humans across the planet, beings across the planet. So you're sort of taking in the full scope of all the energy of all the people. And there are even other empaths who can feel the Earth's energy. So you might be able to find that you're predicting earthquakes or other kind of natural disasters because you're so in touch with the earth itself. So again, all of these empathic kinds all have traits that they hold in common, and all empaths have, at the outset, I would say, very porous boundaries around, as I was saying before, where we end and someone else begins. So I'm saying we because I identify as an empath. So if you're an empath, you might find that you have these traits of one of these specific kinds that I just mentioned, physical or emotional or global or, earth empath. No matter what kind of empath you are, the bottom line is that you quite likely feel frequently exhausted and debilitated due to taking on the energy and pain of others. So just take a moment and notice if this is you. Do you notice that you are taking on the energy and the pain of others, that you're absorbing it, and that it's actually mapping on, it's locking in as your own, and it's difficult for you to discern what's yours and what is someone else's? And I'm just going to take a quick minute to say hi to some peeps in here. Hey, Teresa, and hi, Hope. I'm glad you caught me live too. And hi, Kathleen, and hey, Marlene, and hey, Kimberly, and hi, Jenny, and hi, Annette. I'm glad you love my books. Excellent. And hi, Rhonda. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So again, if you're identifying as an empath, if you are noticing that it is your nature to be sort of, I would say it's almost like you've got the antenna to hone in on the pain of others, and you take it on, or you take it in, and you're not clear about what's yours and what's someone else's, you're in the right place. Because I want to let you know that setting boundaries as an empath may feel impossible, and yet I'm telling you right now, it is the gateway to your freedom. And I want to show you why that is and how you can do it. So again, if you're an empath, you might have traits of several different kinds of the empaths we just looked at, and you're feeling frequently exhausted and debilitated due to taking on the energy and the pain of others. So most empaths exhibit traits that include agreeableness, feeling optimistic, a willingness to compromise, and a concern for social harmony. And in addition, most empaths are very trusting, and we feel really strongly invested in our relationships. We are the natural helpers and fixers, and that's what essentially makes us prey to what my friend Chris Northrup refers to as energy vampires. And essentially, an energy vampire is a narcissist. So there is this whole dance that happens between the empath and the energy vampire, the empath and the narcissist. And essentially what's happening is, the deeper into our empathic traits we dissolve, we start to hide. We have this deep desire to hide. We have the deep desire not to rock the boat. We want to blend in. We don't want to make a scene. This is really our form of self-preservation and self-protection. So this is also why many empaths are introverts, and many empaths really get overwhelmed being in a scenario where there are so many people and so many different energies around, because we are taking in all the energetics of a scene. And so again, we want to look at how, as an empath, no matter how hard we often will try to take care of ourselves, we still end up getting depleted. Our resources get depleted. We are exhausted. We are ill. And we're having health issues sometimes that we don't even understand. So I want you just to pay attention to that as well as we start to move into the deeper conversation here. And I want you to know that the good news, the great news, is that you as an empath do not have to sacrifice your well-being. You do not have to sacrifice your well-being. There are ways you can take advantage of your innate strengths and your deep, deep well of goodness. Okay, so let's say a few. Hi, Annette, and hey, Jenny, I'm glad you're here too. And hi, Rini, I'm glad you like the topic. And hi, Denise and Janice, hey there. Jenny, definitely an emotional empath. Janice, I'm exhausted because of this. I hear you. Hey, Deborah. Hello, Ageless Deborah. Happy to see you here. I'm glad you're excited to read my new book. Hey, Kathy, I'm a very strong empath. School, workplace were very difficult when younger. Didn't understand why I was extremely exhausted all the time, debilitating. I feel strong symptoms with planetary movements, feeling quite sick right now with the eclipse of 2020 energies. I have learned to set very strong boundaries. Beautiful, beautiful. Lifesaver. Kimberly, working with people through touch. I used to feel drained and in pain by certain clients. After years of being sucked dry, I had to create an energetic barrier around myself. Now I wonder if that barrier is too thick because I can't connect with a good guy. Very interesting observation on your part to see whether the boundary you set is too strong and is actually now keeping you it's sort of like keeping you armored, keeping you behind the armor, so that the intimacy isn't, you're not able to be penetrated by and have intimacy. The armor isn't able to be penetrated, and that you're not able to let yourself out. Yeah. Hi, Natasha in Canada. Welcome. So part of the issue here that we're looking at is when we're an empath, when we're super sensitive, when we're intuitive, when we are by nature the fixer, the helper, the pleaser, when we're by nature not wanting to rock the boat, when we're looking to create harmony, what's really happening essentially at the base level is we're putting everyone else ahead of ourselves. And so the invitation here, and this is going to feel like a really tall order and a really big stretch for you. The invitation here is to actually start getting in contact with your own needs and start meeting your own needs first. So we're going to need to step into a place where you can even begin to understand, that you have needs, because many empaths, we've been resisting our needs for so long that we actually tend to pride ourselves on having no needs. We go into the space of being independent and self-sufficient, and we pride ourselves on having no needs. And yet what happens is that there's an underlying level of resentment that begins to build when our needs aren't being met, because we actually think that others should be as sensitive to us as we are to them. So just notice if that's something that happens in your life. If you find yourself in the query around, I'm so hypersensitive to what everyone else needs, and no one is tapping into the sensitivity of what I need. So this is what puts us in the place of being the victim. This is what puts us in the place of being the martyr. And this is what puts us into the place of thinking that other people can meet our needs. So the myth here that we want to start to dispel is that we can't actually make anyone else happy. We can't make anyone else mad. And the same goes in the opposite direction. So our joy, our peace is an inside job. It's up to us to take responsibility for what's happening here and actually pull back from the overdeveloped sense of responsibility we're taking for other people. Annette, I find I put my adult children first and their needs. Yes, so this is incredibly common. It's incredibly common if you identify as an empath, and I'll say in parentheses, a people pleaser, a peacekeeper, someone who doesn't want to rock the boat. You have been likely for decades, for a lifetime, you've been putting other people's needs ahead of your own. And what happens when we do that is we're abandoning ourselves. And we're really sending the message to the universe that other people's needs override ours. So we're sublimating our own needs and desires in service of implementing all of theirs. And this, my friends, needs to stop. We cannot live any longer in this place of putting everyone else's needs ahead of ours, because what's happening is the level of resentment is getting so high because we're not taking responsibility for ourselves. David Smith, hi, honey. Kathy, I'm a Libra, recovering people pleaser. I hear you. I too am a recovering people pleaser after decades of putting everyone else's needs ahead of mine. And I really had to learn and understand about what I talk about a lot, reclaiming healthy selfishness. So most of us have put selfish in the category of bad, wrong, negative. And I'm really here on my soapbox to say that selfish, self-care, and self-love are three sisters whose job it is to support you in honoring yourself. So a telltale sign that we are lacking solid boundaries is resentment. Notice the level of resentment you can feel. When you're biting your tongue, when you're stuffing down, when you're wishing or wanting someone to be different, when you're wanting someone's behavior to change, because all this is really doing is creating inner conflict for yourself. When you are not surrendered, you're creating inner conflict. And let me define surrender, because I also think surrender gets a bad rap. I think most people look at surrender and think that it means giving up or giving in or throwing in the towel or the white flag. And I look at surrender as releasing our willful stronghold on needing anything or anyone to be a certain way. And so notice how attached you are to someone showing up the way that you need them to, because this is a gateway to disappointment. We absolutely have no control around what another person does or does not do. We only have control around our response and reaction. And as I even name response and reaction, there's a few things I want to say here. When we're living other reference lives, and again, most empaths are, because most empaths are absorbing from other people. That's why we don't have a clear sense of self, a clear sense of self-worth, a clear sense of identity. That's why that boundary line between when I end and you begin is blurred. When we are living in that space, we are constantly living in reaction to someone else. So I want to help you source your own response instead of reaction. And response means that you actually need to build in a buffer of time to source what's true for you first, so that you're not simply in reaction to something that's coming from someone outside of you. Happy holidays to you, David. Let's see, Hope. Kathy is saying, Kathy, me too. Jenny saying, true. Nancy, I'm a Libra and can relate. Janice, so what happens if you are an empath, if you have an empath mother who expects the same from you? I'm finally setting boundaries to make me first within my family, and it is not going over well at all. Yes, Janice, so here's the thing. As we start to set boundaries, the people around us may not be fans of the boundaries that we're setting, because essentially we are changing the rules of engagement. We're changing the dynamics that have been in place over time. Also, as we are setting boundaries, we are showing up for ourselves, and we're showing up differently. And we may therefore be holding a mirror up to the people around us who are not evolving. And that mirror is actually showing them the ways in which they are staying stuck and stagnant. So Janice, one thing I want to say is, just to clarify here, when I'm talking about setting boundaries, and especially as an empath, I'm talking about coming from the I, and I will talk about this in every aspect of boundary setting. So the first piece that's really critical is that when we are setting boundaries with people in our lives, we are not pointing a finger, we are not blaming them, and we are not in any way saying you never or you always. We are coming from our experience and our need and what we will do to take care of ourselves in the experience. So Janice, I also want to check in to see if that's the kind of language you're using, because any other kind of language is going to, can be off-putting and can put someone else on the defensive. As soon as we go into you never, you always, or any kind of blame, the other person is going to go right on the defensive. Whereas if I enter the conversation around boundaries and I express from the I around my experience, what I need and what I'm going to do to take care of myself, then it's my truth. And the bottom line is, it's not your responsibility to caretake anyone's response to your truth. Your truth is your truth. It's not your responsibility to manage their experience of your truth. Now, I'm not saying to just go all willy-nilly and be disrespectful or in any way be reckless in the relationship. But I'm also saying that you've likely been biting your tongue on your truth for far too long. So just notice as I'm sharing that what arises. Annette is saying, Nancy, right, I'm a Libra as well. Barbara Ann, self-knowledge and self-care is not actually selfish. So here's what I'm going to say. I'm bringing selfish in here as a positive. In fact, all of these concepts are really charge neutral. It's simply the way we relate to them. And the more we push selfish away as a bad quality, the more selfish people we're going to be drawing toward us. So I'm actually wanting you to embrace selfish. I am selfish, not to push selfish away as something that you don't want to be. Right, Hope, lots of Libra people pleasers here. Let's see, Kathleen, thinking of working as an administrative support person, this is exactly that, putting everyone's needs before ours. It's the nature of the job. So glad I'm retired now. Yes, believe me, I often think back to my, for over a decade, I was the event director at Hay House. I was traveling the world, producing events with the greatest minds and teachers and authors and speakers in the field of self-empowerment. It was my dream job. It was amazing. And I now know clearly that what made me exceptional at my job was having no boundaries. Because what I know is that the woman I am in this moment couldn't go back and do that job the way that I did it. What made me be able to do the job the way I did was that I was putting everyone else ahead of me. And I did not know at the time how to sort out where I ended and they all began. And I didn't know how at the time to source out my own sense of value and worth from what I did. So in other words, all my value, all my worth was tied up in my achievement, my producing, everything that I did, all of my productivity. That's how I knew I was worthy. And I was constantly looking for external validation. And here's what I'll say about this. It has been my life's work to be able to separate this out so that I know I know my worth and my value. And it has nothing to do with what I do. It has nothing to do with anyone other than myself. And when we are chasing gold stars, when we're chasing the external validation, no gold stars will ever be enough to fill the void that we are carrying. So every single thing we're seeking externally needs to be resolved internally first. Denise, yeah, the inner conflict is exhausting. So here's what I want to say about inner conflict. When we are avoiding external conflict, so those of you who are empaths, we know that one of the telltale traits of being an empath is also being conflict avoidant. We don't want to rock the boat. It's also because we're holding conflict as something bad. Conflict to me is simply an illumination of our differences. And if we are in a healthy, true relationship, that relationship is a container that is strong enough to hold the truth of who you are and the truth of who I am at the same time, even if the truths are different. So when we are avoiding external conflict, we are creating more internal conflict. And yes, Kimberly, exactly, it's codependency. Because what's happening is we are waiting to see what's happening with another person before we identify what's happening with us. So I define codependency as wanting someone else to regulate us emotionally, expecting someone else to regulate us. I need this from someone else in order to feel okay. And the other thing that happens in codependency is we get stuck in this loop in our head of what do I need to do or say to make everything be okay? Because we're going in believing that the goal is harmony at all cost. But harmony at all cost comes at a high cost. And when we're doing whatever it takes to keep the peace, it takes a really high toll on us. So this is why the base level here of how to set boundaries if you're an empath is to first begin doing the boundary work within, where you can start to separate yourself out from other people. And you can start to source your own preferences and your own desires unrelated to anyone else outside of you. Hi, Debbie. Hi, Monica, honey. Let's see, Nancy. Once I started setting my boundaries with family and friends, they picked up my energies and weren't as needy anymore. It's always a work in progress. It is always a work in progress. Exactly. Annette, I've started not ringing my children. I'm waiting for them to contact me. My father hardly contacted us and we went to him always. So I'm taking a lesson from him. Not easy. None of this is easy. I will certainly acknowledge that. None of it is easy. Maura, I'm such an empath. Jenny, wow, I can relate to a lot, Nancy, putting my value on productivity on my job and external validation from others. Yes. Maura, so true. Exactly. Makes so much sense. Kathy, you need to tell others I'm taking care of myself. Seems to shut people up. When you start pointing fingers, people start attacking you. It's all about navigating around people. So it's about navigating around people, but it's about navigating from I. Here's what I'm doing to take care of myself. Be more invested in your self-honoring practice than you are in being understood. So I want you to really get that. Most of us want other people to understand what we're doing. We want to explain. We want to give a reason. We want to give an excuse. Even when we say no, we want to give a reason and an excuse. We don't need to give any excuse for our truth. We simply need to stand in what's true for us and come back to the refrain of, here's what I'm doing to take care of myself. So again, and hey, Sherry, so again, especially when we're empaths, because we are so highly sensitive, we're so tuned into other people. And what happens when we're so highly tuned into other people is we lose all sense of self. So I want to bring in the both and here. You can stay tuned into others, but I want you to tune into yourself also. So when I say, give yourself permission to put yourself first, give yourself permission to make yourself a priority, what I'm wanting to do is have you invite yourself into the conversation, not continue leaving yourself out. You can absolutely take good care of yourself and be available for others. What I'm wanting to put an end to here is discounting yourself for the sake of everyone else. Natasha, could you give us examples of your boundaries that dramatically shifted things for you? Replying to Annette. I think you might be asking Annette that question. I'm not clear. Natasha, if you're asking that for Annette, maybe you can let us know. Orna, this is so important for me to hear. Good. Maura, I met my twin, and along that twin flame journey, I've learned that nobody, and even a twin flame, cannot even save us. That is codependent, and I'm writing this in my twin flame book. Great. Yes, no one can save us, and we can't save anybody else. And it's really important to learn this, that there is no saving and rescuing that can be done, even though we have the idea that we can do that. So again, there's a lot here, and I want to take it to sort of the base level of how to set boundaries if you're an empath. Simply begins with beginning to source your own preferences, source your own desire, and so that you can begin to name what's most important for you. Oh, Natasha, you're saying for me. Okay, great, good. So once again, I will say that there's lots of good info in my new book, which I just put in the comments here. So nancylevin.com/new book, and I will give you a few ways in which setting boundaries has set me free. One is getting really, really clear around my time. So I'm very, very boundaried around my time. Time is not a renewable resource. So in terms of my calendar, in terms of what I'm willing to put on my calendar, in terms of when I take appointments, I have a very non-negotiable evening and morning ritual and routine that I adhere to because it allows me to show up best in the world. This is a boundary that I set for myself around the non-negotiables, what I can live with and what I won't live without. And that's how I look at it. in terms of also the larger conversation of boundaries being the limits that I set around what I will or will not do, will or will not tolerate, will or will not accept, and what's okay and what's not okay. Major boundaries that I set are in relationship around the ways in which I'm willing to have in terms of topics of conversation that are off the table. I set very clear boundaries around unsolicited feedback. So I let people know that if I want feedback, I'll ask for it. But if they're giving me unsolicited feedback, I'll very clearly let them know that I'm not available for that. I set very clear boundaries with family around what I can do and what I can't do. So there are very tangible ways I say no to almost everything. I've really had to learn how to move from the knee-jerk yes into the no. That has been a big part of my own personal healing journey around boundaries. I used to say yes to any request that was made of me out of obligation. Out of guilt. I didn't want anyone else to feel angry or feel disappointed. I wanted to feel like the hero. So there was a righteousness involved. What I've learned is that anytime I feel guilty in this context, it simply means that I'm taking really good care of myself. The guilt is the indicator that I'm honoring myself. And that's what feels different. But that's what we need to do as empaths. We need to start turning the ship around. We need to start turning the illumination around so that we are putting our attention on us instead of everyone outside of us. Because at the end of the day, we are making sure that everyone else has what they need, and we are telling the world it's okay that we are settling for the scraps and crumbs. And the bottom line is that the life you want to live? Do you want to live the life where you are getting by on the scraps and crumbs? To me, that's no life. You're living someone else's life, and it's not sustainable to live someone else's life. This is about inhabiting your own life. Monica, so needed to hear this. Thanks, Nancy. So can relate to this group. At times it really hurts. Wish I could turn it off or toughen up. Have been taking care of self and trying to make changes with boundaries, but they're not happy with, they're not happy. So here's the other thing. We want to stop making other people's happiness our priority. Other people can not love our choices or not love our decisions, but it doesn't necessarily translate to them not loving us. We're the ones who make that giant leap. We're the ones who go black and white. Sherry, Nancy, you nailed this. This is a profound explanation of my lifetime experience. Thank you for putting this into words and creating an obvious pathway as I move on. You're very welcome. Orna, it is huge all you were saying. Thank you. I'm glad you're here listening. Hope, I was married for 25 years to a covert narcissist. I went from being independent to being codependent. I became very ill with autoimmune diseases and never really recovered. Any suggestions? My baseline suggestion here is to do the practices that bring you into the deepest connection with yourself. So it may seem that you're being antisocial. It may seem that you're being hermetic or that you're being, hibernating. I want you to start really being able to feel the energetic boundary around you of what is yours and what's not. And this is the way that you're going to begin to be able to heal what is not healed. To actually really be able to come in contact with your own needs and how can you meet your own needs? How can you name your needs and how can you take the best care of yourself? Monica, getting the audible, excellent. Linda, dear Nancy, I have incredible trouble doing this with my narcissistic partner who calls me selfish as I try to set boundaries. How do I deal with this situation? Leaving seems the only option as he crosses every boundary of mine. So Linda, here's the deal. I'm glad you brought this in. The number one truth I want you to know about setting boundaries is that no one can cross your boundaries but you. And I just want you to hear that. So it is up to you, it's up to each one of us to set and maintain the boundaries that we have in place. Whenever we want to go into the place of he or she crossed my boundaries, we have to actually move out of the victim mode and into empowerment and responsibility around the ways in which we are enabling our boundaries to be crossed. And this is the hard truth. So if your boundary is being crossed, first step is that you need to know that you are the one crossing it. He is not crossing your boundaries. When we set a boundary, it's ours to hold. It's not anyone else's job to uphold, respect, or honor our boundary. It's simply up to us. So the question becomes, yes, leaving is an option. What are the other options for you to hold your boundary in the face of a narcissist? Now, here's what I'll say. When you're in relationship with a narcissist, and I've been there, I'm speaking from experience, there is no way to get the narcissist on board with you. The narcissist is not going to understand. The narcissist will name call. The narcissist will be invested in the relationship staying exactly how it's always been because you, the empath, have been providing what is called narcissistic supply. So this is why Chris Northrup wrote the book about energy vampires. It's literally like they're sinking their teeth in and they're drinking your blood. So the narcissistic supply is what the empath gives the narcissist so the narcissist can live. So the nature of your relationship, the dynamic that's in place, the narcissist is invested in it staying exactly as it is. That's why it's up to you to do something different. If you have read any of my books or you've heard me speak, you may know my story. I was in an 18-year marriage with a narcissist, a very abusive relationship. I was kicked out of my house that I bought and paid for 5 times. And on the 5th time, I didn't go back. That was the first boundary I set in my life, and I was 45 years old. Let's see. Monica, non-negotiables. Yes, the non-negotiables are critical. Knowing for you what you are willing, what you can live with, what you won't live without, and knowing what are those non-negotiables that actually allow you to show up healthiest in your life. Janice, wow, I love the new, the guilt means we are taking care of ourselves. That's big. It's huge. I know. I'll tell you, it like dawned on me one day and I was like, oh my God, this is like a revelation. What if the reframe around guilt in this context is that I am taking good care of myself? And it's so unfamiliar. And the habit is to default into guilt, and the guilt is bad. Nancy, I always ask myself, am I doing this out of love or guilt? Yes. Sarah, thank goodness you said that guilt is the indicator. That was just a big shift for me. Thank you, darling. You are so welcome. Hope, P.S. I need to drop the pattern of allowing narcissists into my life. Yes. Yes. That is the pattern, and that is what needs to shift. And as you take better care of yourself, there will be no space for a narcissist. I can tell you that this is true for me, and if I can do it, so can you. Maura, thank you for being on. You're so welcome. Hi, sweet Paul. Aw, you're so sweet. Mwah, you're welcome. Natasha, ooh, it's so okay to hibernate while tuning into yourself. I am a big fan of hibernating. I am, when I am home, I'm a homebody, and almost to like reclusive capacity. Like I have a high capacity for being a recluse, a hermit. And so I do think that it's important. The other thing I'll say is, again, this is sort of just a shift in semantics, but a lot changed for me when I was able to move from looking at, being alone to being with myself. And it's just language, but it made a really big shift for me because I felt like I had to defend my aloneness. I love to be alone. I love to be with myself. And I felt like there was a time in my life that I had to defend my aloneness. And just the shift of moving out of alone to with myself has me come into a different kind of connection when I'm with myself. Janice, while I love that guilt can be your guide to knowing what you are taking, that you're taking care of yourself. It's a game changer for me. I'm so glad. I'm so glad. Jenny, good point. Nancy, a lot of times maintaining my boundaries is the hardest part, much harder than setting. Yes. So this is the thing. The setting the boundaries is one thing, but the holding the boundary is everything. Because it's our nature to say some version of what, of what was said before, and what we've all said something like. I hear it from my clients time and time again. I tried to set a boundary, but he or she just kept doing the thing. He or she will keep doing the thing. It's what they do. That's why it's up to us to actually keep everything in place. And that's why I said earlier, it's not about the other person. We can set a boundary and maintain a boundary with someone else, and we never even have to say it out loud, because we're the ones holding it, and we're the ones determining what we're going to do to take care of ourselves in the process. Let's see. Maura, relationship with family, as we are all type A personalities. I get that too. Lisa Monroe, I'm going through this now, just left a narcissist mother and ex-narcissist, both gone and no contact. Hardest thing I've ever had to do. I'm struggling thinking about them like coming off a drug, trauma bond. I hear you. It is the hardest thing I ever had to do, and the disconnection with no contact. But it is the way. It is the way. And it is like coming off of a drug, because you have to realize that you played a part in the relationship, and that you were getting high off of the way that the relationship was serving you, that it was serving some need of yours, even if you were the one feeling the most impact in a negative way. There was still some way that you were actually receiving something that you needed. Let's see. Sarah, yes, I love hibernating. Silence is my biggest re-energized healer. Yes. Sherry, you're so sweet. What a blessing your gift is. I thank you from the bottom of my heart. Rhonda, can't hear all of this too many times. I get it. Tammy, wow, as an empath, when I commit to help others, sometimes they take all of my emotional support and take advantage of it, but I need to learn how to not let it get to me. It's not about not letting it get to you. It's actually about setting the boundary around not allowing yourself to be that drained. So if you are being taken advantage of, it's not that they are taking advantage of you. It's that you are opening yourself to be available to being taken advantage of. Yes. Denise, when you say holding a boundary, do you mean responding to their actions? Here's what I'll say about this, and I'll give you an example. So it can be something as simple as, and to start with this, to start from here, I feel uncomfortable when we go out to dinner and you drink too much. I feel uncomfortable. So moving forward, I'd first like to see if you're in agreement to only have 2 drinks when we go out to dinner. So you can just see what the other person's available for. And you can then say, I'm just giving you a heads up. I want to let you know ahead of time that if you decide to have more than 2 drinks when we're out, in order to take care of myself, I'm not going to go home with you that night. Or I'm going to leave the restaurant. Or I'm going to leave our friend's house. Or whatever it is. So it's an extreme example, but I'm showing you the trajectory. I feel uncomfortable when you do this. Are you willing to have an agreement here? And just letting you know ahead of time, this is your choice. I'm not trying to control your actions. You have a choice around what you do or don't do. And if you do this thing that I just shared, here's what I'm going to do to take care of myself. It can be with your mother-in-law. I'm just letting you know. It can be, I get really angry when you try to micromanage my parenting. So I'm just letting you know ahead of time that if you continue to tell me how to parent my own children, moving forward, we are going to shorten our visits to your house in order to take care of ourselves. whatever that is. So again, we can do it from this energy. We're letting people know what's going on for us, what we're going to do to take care of ourselves. And again, none of this even has to be spoken. This can just happen right here. A promise that you make with yourself, a commitment, and then you hold yourself accountable to following through. Don't set a boundary that you are not willing to maintain. Don't say something like, I'm going to leave the restaurant, if you're not going to leave the restaurant. You have to put in what works for you, because you have to be able to hold it. Otherwise, you're the little girl or little boy who cried wolf. So there's a lot here, and I really love that you have stayed on. And again, I'm just putting in the comments here, my new book coming out January 7th, Setting Boundaries Will Set You Free. It's right there behind me. I got a copy early, hardcover, ebook, and audiobook. And I hope that you will be with me as we continue the conversation. Sherry said, I relate to severing my relationship with my family of origin since my mother's death, so toxic and unworkable, and detoxing is a big challenge. Your support is great in knowing you have been there. I have been there. All right, loves. Thank you so much for being here. I love our time together. I love our conversations. I love how interactive and honest and open and transparent you're willing to be. And as always, I will be here every Thursday morning, and we will be able to continue the conversation. So let me just see, I'm just looking here. Linda, you gave a great example of how to set boundaries. However, when I try to do this, and I've tried really hard, he calls me controlling and selfish. I'm at a loss and heartbroken. Just graduated yesterday from my bachelor's of nursing, and he couldn't be happy for me and ruined the day. I'm so sad. Right. So Linda, if I'm correct, you are the one with the narcissist. So here's the thing. You have to begin willing to put your own experience over the importance of what other people think. You have to begin willing to find the way to put your needs over someone else's needs and letting go of what everyone else thinks. As I was saying before, the narcissist will be invested in keeping you down so he rises into grandiosity. And I've said this before in different contexts, and I'll add it here. The way that narcissism shows up in the empath is when we try to come in and fix and heal and rescue and save and change the narcissist. So, of course, he can't be happy for you. He doesn't want anyone else to be the center of attention. Your sadness and your decision to let him override you is yours. That's on you. That's your responsibility. I want you to start seeing the separation of that. I want you to start seeing the difference there. You actually have the power. You actually have the power to set a boundary and hold it, regardless of what the other person does or doesn't do. And you are in control of your own joy. You are in control of your own emotion. It might feel like the narcissist is in control of you. I've been there. I lived 18 years inside of that. I get it. But the bottom line is you are in control of your own joy. Okay, we will keep the conversation going. There's lots more where this came from. I'm going to be sharing more with you over time. Remember to tune in on Thursdays at 9 o'clock Pacific and 12 o'clock Eastern, and we will keep it going. And I love you very much.